you're sleeping. The sound of rain hitting the roof feels completely normal. Just another rainy night. That's what everyone thinks. 5 minutes later, you step barefoot onto the floor and freeze. Water is already up to your ankles. 10 minutes more, it's at your knees. The lights flicker, then cut out completely. Outside the window, the entire hillside behind your house is sliding down like a giant river of living mud. Where would you run when even the ground beneath your feet is no longer safe? That was the night millions of people in Sri Lanka realized. Cyclone Ditwah was not just a storm. It was a nightmare made of floodwater, mud, and darkness. At first, nothing seemed too unusual. In late November 2025, heavy rain had been falling for days. People in Sri Lanka are used to that. It's monsoon season. There's always a storm somewhere out at sea. Just another story on the news. But on the radar screens that only meteorologists were watching, there was something very different. Ditwah was barely moving. A massive cloud shield just sat over the island, anchored in place, sucking moisture from the Indian Ocean, spinning it up and dumping it back down, over and over again, especially over the central highlands and along the river valleys leading to the sea. That evening began like so many other rainy nights. The drumming of rain on tin roofs, the steady drip of water onto the floor, the hiss of wind outside the windows. Then, suddenly, the small streams behind people's houses swelled into thick brown torrents. Water spilled over riverbanks, swept across fields, burst into yards, porches, and living rooms. Asphalt streets turned into rivers. Headlights from passing cars wobbled and then vanished beneath the rising water. In tea-growing regions like Badula and Nuwara Eliya, people began hearing a strange sound, not thunder from the sky, but a low rumbling roar rising from deep within the ground. Just seconds later, the hillside behind the village started to move. Earth, rock, and trees slid together like a giant wall of mud charging downhill. The rows of workers' houses at the bottom, where 3 or 4 generations had lived, were buried in an instant. No warning siren, no time to pack, just one deafening crash, and then silence under the mud. Near the capital, Colombo, the water rose so quickly that many families didn't even understand what was happening. Some woke up to the sound of furniture banging against the walls. They stepped out of bed and felt cold water already at their ankles. They ran to the staircase, scrambling upward, watching each step disappear beneath the muddy water. Tables, refrigerators, motorbikes were pushed along, floating past their windows. The sound of people calling to each other, children crying, dogs barking, all tangled into the roar of pounding rain. Outside, military helicopters began flying low through the dark sky, sweeping searchlights across rooftops where desperate hands waved for help. Rescue boats tried to weave their way through a maze of tables, tree trunks, cars, and debris drifting in the flood, trying to reach small clusters of people clinging to metal roofs and power poles. In many places, the road network was simply gone. Bridges had collapsed, roadbeds were gouged out into deep pits, entire sections of highway had just disappeared. Power was out. Cell signals went dead. Emergency hotlines rang non-stop, but countless calls never connected to anyone. That night, survival often came down to decisions made in just a few seconds. One man grabbed hold of a coconut tree, climbed nearly 6 meters up, and spent hours shivering in the dark, watching his entire village disappear beneath swirling water. A mother held her 18-month-old child, climbing the stairs with the baby in her arms, counting each step as it slowly sank below the flood. In the T-hills, families held flashlights and shovels, digging into the mud with their bare hands, praying for one faint cry from beneath the earth. When sunrise finally came, Sri Lankans woke up in a country that had been redrawn by water and mud. From above, large areas looked like a patchwork of brown lakes. In some places, the water was chest deep, even up to a grown person's neck. Thousands of homes were destroyed or severely damaged. Railway lines were buried under rock, fallen trees, and thick sludge. Major highways were simply gone from the map, and the early numbers were already horrifying. Hundreds of people dead, hundreds more missing, hundreds of thousands directly affected, tens of thousands forced to abandon their homes. If you've listened this far, pause for just one moment and ask yourself, if tonight the water started rising outside my own door like this, what would I do? Hit the like button so more people can see this story, and subscribe to Global Weather Disasters. Because next, we're going to dive into the most important question. How did a storm that seemed so ordinary end up erasing entire communities like this? The real question isn't how strong were the winds. It's, how did this storm break an entire country so fast? First, Ditwah was too slow. Most cyclones hit and move on. Ditwah almost stalled. A slow cyclone is like a fire hose on full blast aimed at the same spot for hours. What should have been a few hours of heavy rain became an entire day and night. No soil, no river system can cope with that. Second, Sri Lanka's mountains turned it deadly. The central highlands forced moist air upward, supercharging the rain. Hillsides soaked through, lost their grip, and collapsed. Whole slopes slid, then mud and rock choked rivers and bridges, pushing floodwaters even higher into towns and villages. Third, human choices magnified the damage. Homes in floodplains and at the foot of slopes. Cities paved over with concrete. Old drainage never built for this kind of storm. Forests cut back on steep hills. Warnings that many people didn't receive, didn't trust, or didn't know how to act on. And behind everything is a warmer world. Warmer air holds more water, so storms can unleash more rain. A cyclone like Ditwah decades ago would still be dangerous, but today, with more moisture in the air and more people in harm's way, the risk of disaster is much higher. What happened in Sri Lanka is a preview, not an exception. If you live near rivers, coasts, or slopes, this could be your story one day. At the national level, countries need to update risk maps for today's climate, not the past. Give rivers room instead of boxing them in concrete. Protect forests on hills to stabilize slopes. Upgrade drainage and bridges for extreme rain, not normal storms. Turn vague alerts into clear instructions, how deep, where, when to leave. At the household level, small actions matter. Know the highest flood level ever recorded where you live. Keep a grab-and-go bag, documents, meds, cash, power bank, flashlight. Watch for slope warning signs, cracks, leaning walls, odd ground noises. Make a simple plan with neighbors, who helps kids, who helps the elderly, who has a vehicle or boat. In nights like Ditwah, people survive because they have each other. Cyclone Ditwah will be remembered in Sri Lanka as the night water and mud redrew the map. For us listening, it should be remembered as a warning. Extreme weather is getting wetter, harsher, and less predictable. Places that felt safe yesterday may not be safe tomorrow. The thin line between tragedy and survival is often just this: thinking ahead before the sky turns black. We can't erase storms from the map, but we can do everything possible to make sure storms don't erase so many people from it. If this story hits you, don't just scroll on. Share it. Talk with your family and friends about what you would do if the water started rising outside your door. The more each of us prepares, even a little, the stronger we all are when the next storm comes.